Hey everybody, it's the Last Robo-Kai here, and welcome to another episode of Let's Play Dawn of War! Last time we killed War Boss Ork Among Us, and that pretty much removes the Orks from the plot relevance. So now we're going to be jumping in, and we're going to be beating the piss out of a completely different alien race. And joining me for this violent murder...
Yo yo yo, I am sad Ork Among Us left us with his amazing name, but whatever, there's more shit to kill. There's always more shit to kill in Dawn of War.
Yeah, he really did sort of just sweep in and then sweep out again very quickly. So,
Ork Among Us.
yeah, it's a great name. It's almost like it's wasted just how briefly he appeared. You know, like just shed a little tear for an orc name that is was too good for the world.
Too good for this world, indeed.
And while we do that, you can listen to Gabriel Angelos' briefing.
The Orks have been repelled, and their war boss has been defeated. But this war is far from over. The Orks still threaten to overcome several major population centers, and could mass more than a large enough force to overwhelm the Imperial armies present on the planet. We have bought time, nothing more. But this is no longer a primary concern. Our scouts have recovered evidence that the forces of chaos, the great enemy, may be operating on this planet, right under our very noses. We must face this foe wherever they stand. If there is even a chance that they are here, we must seek them out and destroy them. Inquisitor Toth is demanding that we leave the planet, but of all the powers his position grants him, commandeering a space marine company is not one of them. I must admit that I find his presence unwelcome so soon after the events on my homeworld of Cyrene. Inquisitors have a way of inflaming a guilty conscience, and that I do not need right now.
That is one of the easiest, simplest ways to put it.
Yeah, okay, so it's no longer safe at the safe positions now, guys. It's all right. You can head to Magna Bonum now.
Magnum Boner.
This warp storm could trap us here for a month or for a century. We cannot risk staying here. We must evacuate Tartarus before it arrives in 3 days' time.
The Imperial Guard and Holy Fleet can attend to the evacuation. The Blood Ravens have more pressing matters to contend with.
Such as?
I believe agents of chaos have taken strong root here.
I sense no taint here. Even so, were there a chaos presence on Tartarus, it is better we leave them here with the Orks than waste more lives fighting them. We could wish no worse fate for either of our enemies, and to be trapped with the other. But we must leave here now.
That is a matter for my brothers and I to decide. We will use these 3 days to settle our affairs and satisfy our suspicions. Meanwhile, you have our transports to facilitate evacuation.
Colonel Brom, the captain and I must attend to matters of faith. If you would leave us, please.
But surely this involves me as a...
Forgive me for not being clear on the matter. I said please, when in fact I meant now.
This does involve him. You should have shown him a modicum of respect.
Captain, you uncovered extensive heresy on your home world. Cyrene, was it?
That has nothing to do with the events here on Tartarus.
But I believe they do. You requested the Inquisition undertake an exterminatus, the destruction of your planet's entire populace, which we obliged.
I still fail to see...
Captain, I am not questioning your loyalty, but I must wonder if your actions on Cyrene have not affected your judgment. Perhaps that was a poor choice of words. I merely fear that you might see chaos, but it does not exist. I ask that as a loyal subject of the Emperor, you serve the Imperium's interest before your own agenda. Captain. That Inquisitor had no right to speak to you in such manner. But perhaps he is right. The coming storm will trap our enemies here, where they can consume one another.
And what if the forces of chaos escape the system before the storm? No. We will not use this freak occurrence as an excuse to avoid our enemies, or our responsibility. They are here for a reason, and we will discover that reason.
We are with you, brother Captain, as always.
The humans are coming your way in full force. You should hear their heavy feet long before you see them, and smell them long before that.
Orbital Command has indicated the dropship landed in this general proximity. We've discovered a path, Captain. It's obvious someone has been digging here.
Cut by orcs?
I've never seen an orc lend such a careful hand to a task.
If it wasn't orcs, then it must be the forces of chaos. We will follow this path and discover the truth behind what has transpired here.
Yeah, it's the Eldar.
I really appreciate that the Inquisitor was like that was a poor choice of words, but not an unintentional one. You're a freaking Inquisitor.
Available to us. Construct it, and we will have access to powerful abilities.
Yeah, so we've got a timer on the clock. We have 3 days to try and figure out what's going on. Obviously, it's story only. Like these missions, I can take as long as I want, and it won't matter. And I have a ridiculous amount of heroes to do it with.
You just imagine that these missions progress in real time. Like unless you're not going to break the game unless you just leave your computer on and walk away from it.
For 4 days.
For 4 days. Like at that point, then yeah, maybe you'll come back and your computer will have crashed. And you'll just have a whole bunch of like crackling purple energy on your screen. Like I've never tried that one.
Await your instructions.
That's the viewer's homework, I think.
Yes, please somebody test that for us, except for the part where you shouldn't, because that sounds awful.
We'll move ahead and mark any enemy positions.
Yeah, so now we're dealing with the second alien race of Dawn of War, the Eldar. We know them, and Cool Guy hates them.
They are literally the cause of all of the galaxy's problems.
How can I serve?
They're not the cause of all of the galaxy's problems, they're just the cause of one very significantly sized one that's torn through real space.
And then continues to cause more problems by virtue of its existence. Literally without the eye of chaos, which was caused by the Eldar, literally having so much deviant butt sex that it tore a hole in the universe. That one thing continues to cause the primary issue for the Imperium as a whole. Not to mention probably at least half a dozen other races.
All I can say is it's adorable that you think it was that caused it, and not them carving new holes in something to have sex with it.
I mean, I said
using an
deviant
existing
butt
hole.
sex. Like there's.
Look, I'll explain to everybody what we're talking about. You see, the concept behind the Eldar is that they are an extremely long-lived species, but at the same time they have an emotional range that is absolutely insane. So, and this was by design. The people that created them, the old ones, you hear that a lot in Warhammer settings. They basically did that so that they could make use of their psychic powers, because they were fighting a war against an enemy that did not have and was susceptible to psychic attack. So they created the Eldar, and the Eldar, as a result, have a very, very broad emotional spectrum. But unfortunately, without discipline on that, that sort of means that they can fall down rabbit holes very easily. It's like the average person would go on TV tropes or Wikipedia, and then they would just keep clicking related links and related links and related links. That's kind of the thing that happens to the Eldar a lot. But it could be about anything. It could be about baking a cake.
Wait. By my command. They weren't attacking. Attack! They were fleeing.
What could inspire fear in an orc?
I am ready.
And as a result of this, once they had won this war with the enemy, the Eldar's gods had more or less, been taken out of the picture. You basically had the circumstance where the Eldar were free to pursue any of their interests, and unfortunately, any of their interests just kept getting worse and worse. And some of them realized they were going down on that path, and so they were like, well, if we keep doing this, something bad is going to happen. We know for a fact that the energies we tap into with our psychic powers, come from this thing, this unreal space, that would eventually be called the warp. And so they were like, we need to stop doing this. We need to live much more disciplined lives. The vast majority of the population went, yeah, nah, it'll be fine, mate. So these Eldar built themselves these giant colony ships known as craft worlds, and hopped aboard them to leave. And they hadn't really gotten too far away before, oops-a-daisies, yes, it seems that all this obsession has resulted in the birth of a chaos god known as Slaanesh, who is the god of excess.
We must proceed with caution.
And as a result, two things happened. Firstly, giant hole in real space was torn in the heart of the Eldar Empire, forming the Eye of Terror, as it's known. And the second thing is that now, any Eldar that dies, their soul is immediately devoured by Slaanesh, because such is their bond to this god that they created. And so Craftword Eldar, the Eldar that we're facing, they are the remnants of those who hopped on their ships and tried to get away, and here they are.
Be it Eldar or Chaos, I will have answers either way. Press on.
And unfortunately, not all of the Eldar that we're murdering right there will necessarily be immediately consumed by the Prince of Excess, because they are all very much aware of what awaits them. So they tend to wear soul crystals, which captures their soul as it attempts to leave their body. And in the ideal case, they are recovered by their compatriots and put into what's called an infinity circuit in the craft world, which basically is like a giant repository of souls, which goes into one of the Eldar's endgame, which is like a terrible fucking idea, and I won't mention too much more about it because it's yet another rabbit hole in a fandom that is made of rabbit holes. So like we'll get there eventually as we talk more about the Eldar. But suffice it to say that they're space elves, and they are directly responsible for the creation of the primary conduit by which the forces of chaos enter real space. It's not the only one, but it's by far the largest. If they would have just not done it, just not done any of that, then the entire universe would be better off. What? Say
it's
what?
easier said than done to say just stop doing that when you perceive reality on a level that insane. But at the same time, yes, it is 100% their fault.
Yeah.
And we will actually talk about that rabbit hole in the next episode, because the next episode's about an hour long, and that'll give us plenty of time to just absolutely explore the concept of the Eldar God of the Dead. But for now, we're actually just going to focus on craft worlds in particular.
Right.
So the initial forces that we just faced just now, they were guardians, and the general idea for a craft world is that every person on the craft world has to spend a bit of time with an aspect, learning how to fight. And when they basically go on a path and they live a few years of their life learning combat, learning how to fight a particular way, and when they finish that, they can go back to doing whatever they want, but they can still be called upon to act as essentially a militia, because the Eldar don't exactly have much in the way of numbers. And so these are the Guardian squads, basically trained with shuriken catapults, as they're called, sort of rifles that fire tiny electro-psychically charged ninja stars, which I think is cool as fuck. But they are probably the cheapest, weakest of the Eldar's available units. They're definitely the first unit that can be deployed, We did see a ranger as well. Like there are a lot of paths amongst the Eldar. Like that ranger who was watching everybody would technically not be a formal part of the craft world, because there is a path known as the Path of the Outcast, and that's where you leave the craft world and you head off to journey into space, like journey out into the world yourself, and that's incredibly dangerous, especially for the Eldar. In a galaxy incredibly hostile towards like anybody who tries to do a solo journey. But those that can become pretty good at it will often become like rangers for a while, and when they return to the craft world, or if they just choose to assist their craft world of birth, they can supply information and scouting and everything like that.
Yeah, the better phrasing for that is if they return to the craft world, either by choice or just by misadventure. You know, like some Eldar will just decide, yeah, nah, I need like my calling puts me in the service of this other craft world, and then beyond that, like Robokai said, like the Warhammer universe is literally the single most hostile one you can imagine, and the only way, like true way to try to pilot your way through it is to have buddies, and it's doubly dangerous for Eldar, because if a human goes out on their own little personal spiritual journey and dies, they just die. You know, like okay, yeah, it's sad, but you know, you just die, rather than you are literally consumed by your race's collective nightmare.
Yeah. They have a little rough.
They do have a little bit rough, and they fucking deserve it.
And then the vehicle that we've seen now disgorging those troops there, that was the Falcon Grav tank.
Yes, my lord.
The Imperium has, for the most part, shunned gravitational technology. There are a few units that do still use it, but they're not, like, the technology behind it's not quite fully understood and treated with a fair amount of suspicion. We have our new sort of hero character, the Apothecary, that boosts an army's like general regen around them, and they're the ones you want to attach to squads, because they just boost everybody's health, and so that you can go leave and come back into the fight a lot quicker. And the Falcon Grav tank is really important for Eldar playing this game, because it has troop transport capacity. It's one of the first units you can get that actually can be upgraded to have a decent amount of anti-tank to it. You can upgrade its shuriken cannon, I believe it has, or shuriken catapult or something. I think you can upgrade it to have a bright lance, which is the Eldar equivalent of a las cannon. And so that, on top of the fact that they can actually jump jet over terrain, makes the Eldar very good at striking from funny angles to hit you in your weak points, and that's really what the Eldar encompass in Dawn of War. It's a real hit and run sort of play style. They even get an upgrade which makes all their troops have worse accuracy, but they move twice as fast. So you can move your troops in, deactivate it. It's called Fleet of Foot, and it's based on like a tabletop rule that's been changed probably just as many times as they've changed it in patches in Dawn of War, and it's part of the reason people really hate playing against the Eldar, because they can run in, fight you, but if they looks like they're losing, they can get out far faster than you can chase them.
In a couple of patches for Dawn of War, Fleet of Foot technically did reduce accuracy, but it was only by about 5%. It was so minimal that Eldar players simply kept it up all the time.
And attack the Dark Reapers on those cliffs above.
Yes, and so now we finally have access to the Rhino. We talked a little bit about it, but I didn't actually finish my sentences talking about it in the last episode.
Rhino transports are now available. Build them at the Machine Cult.
But we do have the Rhino now. It is the chassis for most of the war weapons for the Space Marines, the land war weapons, and it has no weapons, but where it comes in very handy, and on the tabletop it has like a bolter, so it's like not really missing not having it, but it has smoke launchers, so it launches smoke grenades, and so that's really handy. So you can drive your troops in, pop smoke, and deploy your troops, and they're harder to hit from within the smoke, whereas they don't have any problems firing out again. So it's kind of yet another sort of little tactical sort of advantage that you can pull for yourself as a Space Marine player. You get lots of really interesting sort of tactical add-ons like that I quite enjoy. And shooting at them were the Dark Reapers, which is good, because the Dark Reapers we can talk about aspect warriors.
Yes.
In the Eldar, like I said, a person will spend some time with an aspect. They will learn an art of war. There are lots of different ones that go on a specific focus, and the Dark Reapers are death from long range. They wear lots of death iconography and things like that. The one who invented the fighting style, the Phoenix Lord Morgan Ra, has a scythe like the Reaper himself. They're very much on the whole death thing, and they use the Eldar equivalent, I suppose you could say, of missile launchers. They essentially fire their psychic discharge in which is a very weird sentence, but considering we're both a Slanesh, but we'll just keep on rolling. And on the tabletop, you could sort of switch between one that acted like a frag missile, so it sort of hits lighter, but like hits in sort of more areas, and a crack version. The crack missile being the missiles that we're using to anti-tank things with the Space Marines. Similar sort of thing. The Space Marines could always choose between frag and crack at the time.
Marine squad deployed.
There he is. There's a little rhino. Look at him.
Hey, look at him go.
Yeah, the Rhino was originally, from if I'm recalling correctly, was originally designed for a lunar rover. So basically for exploration of any planet. It's got its own life support systems and things like that, so, as you can see, it being used for tanks in the Imperium makes perfect sense. Because so advanced was the technology, this lunar rover could just take anything a planet would throw at it and keep on ticking. I say lunar rover, but it's more like planetary explorator unit. Flies only the moon.
And for what it's worth, Robokai means that very literally, insofar as even when we're talking about fuel, anything that will burn when given a spark can be used as fuel for Rhino chassis. So that also means the tanks that they use. You can literally throw wood in there, light it on fire, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Like the tactic or the mechanical flexibility of these vehicles is actually pretty crazy.
So the Dark Reapers exemplify long-range combat. We'll be seeing some other ones. We actually saw a little bit of a different one there in the cutscene, but we won't bother talking about that until they appear. We got to get past those Dark Reapers, and one of the big things about the Dark Reapers here is that their fire is sort of good at damaging light vehicles and things like that, but it's got a heavy morale effect. It will basically destroy your morale fairly quickly, and that area that we would be walking through has no cover. In fact, it's the anti-cover that we talked about. So units will move slower through it, they'll take more damage. It's definitely not what we want, so that's how the game is trying to really shove you towards using this transport, because otherwise you might not, because it's got no guns, and if you're like me, you're like, this uses vehicle cap, it's got no guns, I want to kill things, I don't want to like circumvent things. But the Rhino is pretty good early game if you can put the investment into it. Fits a whole squad. Attached units will have no problem with it as well, and you can just unload it where you need.
Yep. Everybody just pops out. And the other important thing to note about transports is, unlike many other games where if the transport is destroyed, everything in it is destroyed. If the transport is destroyed, everybody is going to pop out. Like they'll be knocked down and they'll be disrupted. So it's better to unload them manually. But if you're going into a really hot situation and you just need your dudes in there, it's something you can do. It's not. It's completely okay.
Getting onto the concept of the aspect warriors, it is entirely possible still for Eldar to lose their way, as it were. The Eldar can spend too much time on a path and not want to leave it. And as a result, they often become this concept called exarchs, and it's not a common thing. Exarchs are typically the you can see the damage there. Exarchs are typically the most skilled as well because of an aspect, because they've just gone down the path so hard. The only ones stronger than them are again the founders of the systems that they use, the Phoenix Lords, and that starts to get into spirit stones and the afterlife and things like that. which we might again get into in the next episode.
It's entirely probable, yeah.
The Exarchs, however, are the upgrades for squads in this game, and they will give extra abilities and things like that. I don't believe we see any at this particular time. But yeah, you can see here. You know, we popped some smoke. We we just drove up the tank to try and annoy them. It didn't work. But in spite of the fact they took quite a fair bit of fire from a weapon that's ostensibly light anti-armor, the Space Marine squad, you know, Space Marine Rhinos got him in. The Space Marine squad did really well and survived. And there we go. The wonderful Rhinos have done their job. And I will probably soon nuke them because we don't need them for the rest of this mission.
Yeah, like as much as troop transports were thought out about how they could actually be useful in this game, they're still only useful in pretty specific situations. You know, like ultimately there's still a lot of situations where you would just as soon have another gun.
They are finished. Apothecary.
Now we've got it. And
enemies of the Emperor shall be destroyed.
as everyone sort of noticed, even these heavily armed long-range units died pretty quickly. And that's what happens when you hit delete on a unit.
Yep.
Kablooey.
It's fine.
they just do their death animation, so just keep building Rhinos. We do have a new variation of the Dreadnought as well. We have the Hellfire Dreadnought. Unlike the standard Dreadnought, this one comes out packing ready for ranged combat immediately, so it has no close combat capability whatsoever. Both power fists are replaced by, on one side, the assault cannon, which can be upgraded to the twin-link las cannon. And on the other side, you've got the Hellfire missile launcher, which is a big missile battery, which can be used to shoot the hell. Oh, well,
No signs of chaos.
I await your
I mean, There's definitely been an excavation here. They've definitely been trying to excavate something.
By his word.
And yes, so the Hellfire Dreadnought is good ranged support. Again, the Dreadnought is the hardest working unit in the Space Marine Army.
Really
I'll keep
is.
saying it now. Or at least the hardest working vehicle. The buggers get stuck in at all ranges and directions, and you get some fun ways to move them around the battlefield later on. So,
In terms of the way the game plays though, Hellfire Dreadnoughts end up not being used nearly as much, just because, like we said, it's ranged support. Space Marines are already pretty damn good at ranged.
Yeah.
Typically, you want somebody to go in and flex their freaking their metal muscles and just be like, you are nothing to me, and then they crunch things and they become
especially against the walkers of the other armies.
No joke.
You know, they will. Pretty much all the other ones don't really have a ranged mode. They all want to come up and fight you pretty close. The chaos equivalent is kind of a funny space. Like we'll talk about the Defiler when we get to it.
Oh man! Like everything is a rabbit hole in Warhammer 40k. It is the thing that I love and find most frustrating about the entire fandom. Is that like you want to tell this one story, but to properly tell that story, you have to tell like 3 others.
The instrument of his will.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm impressed I managed to get the whole concept of the Eldar down so quickly at the start there without it like taking the entirety of the episode. And there they are, the warp spiders.
Oh, these dickheads.
These guys are the jump pack equivalent, except they don't use jump packs. They don't jump and fly over because there's plenty of units in the Eldar army, at least for plenty of vehicles in the Eldar army that already do that. No, the way this bugger works, the way these buggers, the warp spiders, work is they teleport essentially tiny hops through warp space, which is incredibly dangerous.
Outrageously dangerous, because one of the semantics of warp space is that the more psychically active you are, the quote-unquote brighter you are, and the more likely it is for a warp demon to notice you. We already went over how to a man and woman, Eldar are all very psychically active. So like taking even nanosecond jaunts through freaking warp space is outrageously dangerous.
Yeah, and the warp spider's weapon is there's probably the best way to describe it is like in its original incarnation. I don't know how it is now because I haven't played the game in quite a while now. I come from like much earlier editions, and have never really had time to sort of continue from there. It had a flame. They had a flamer template, and the way it essentially worked is you're looking at guns that are essentially silly string, except the silly string is monofilament wire. So you fire it at someone who doesn't have armor, and they just get like eviscerated, turned into like slush.
Yeah.
They also have a and the Exarchs have like 2 of them, like under their arms that they sort of control like spider arms. Although they still don't have enough sort of arms to be a spider. Don't worry about it.
For those of you who are having difficulty imagining what monofilament wire is like, you just the most common equivalent is piano wire. They're just going to be shooting piano wire at people.
Yeah, but imagine you can't see it, and the only way you really realize it's happened is because the person just turned into like putty in front of you.
Yeah,
like their innards are on their outside, but they're also in like lots of like tiny cube pieces.
Flayed and cubed.
It's a bad scene. The Eldar don't fuck around.
It's a pretty vicious weapon.
And the Howling Banshees. These ones are the melee units of the Eldar. And, well, there are a few melee units in general Craftworld armies, but the way the Howling Banshees work is they're a fast, lightly armored unit that when they charge into battle, they have these masks that release a very loud shriek, essentially the name, the Banshee. And that causes massive morale damage when you use it, so a big part of the Eldar is hitting hard, destroying your opponent's morale, cutting them down with your really good weapon damage, and hoping they don't actually get a shot back at you because you're made of paper. We saw one of the other vehicles there, the Viper. That's like the War Track equivalent. It's also another unit that has like pretty good anti-tank options and a jump pack, but unfortunately for it, it also is like paper thin armor, and as we all saw, like it took less missiles to destroy it than it would take to kill a War Track.
But there's actually with the armor numbers that are in the game. I remember this distinctly because I went and looked it up when I was diving really hard into the game during this base period. A normal Space Marine has overall better armor than a Viper. Like it has absolute garbage tier for armor. It's just like, okay, well, I suppose that's a thing.
Yeah, its deployment is best used when your opponent is already committed and you zoom it onto the back line and attack their armor from there. I've used it with good success for that in early game. It's definitely something that can harass, say, a Whirlwind sitting way far back, far easier than a lot of other units.
It's also whoa, hello. It's also really good as a worker harasser unit. Like a lot of Warcraft and Starcraft veterans will remember that is a giant thing. Is if you can get a raiding attack off on your enemies workers and distract them for even as much as
They aren't in league, just that they are living up to their lack of honor.
And those who lack honor deserve death.
I'm sorry, I had to let them talk there.
No,
It's such a great exchange. But yeah, if you can get your opponent to get distracted and have to look at their workers for 30 seconds, those are 30 seconds that you're going to be using, getting a tempo advantage that they will hopefully never be able to catch up on.
Yeah. And so we actually saw a few different units just now.
One was the Seer Council, I think.
Yeah, the Seer Council is composed of Warlocks. Now, Warlocks are psychers of the Eldar that have spent time also in an aspect of the Warrior before they went on to start developing their psychic powers. And so they use them specifically for combat purposes. They can channel their psychic powers through their weapons, a similar way that the Librarian channels theirs through their weapons, and it allows them to essentially cut through armor fairly easily essentially flood a person's very soul with psychic power and tear them apart from the inside. They're very dangerous weapons, and you blink and you miss them because we killed them pretty quickly. We also had singular grav platforms. Guardians typically use those in a support capacity, and they can get upgrades to their squads to use them. There are also like singular ones that you can build, and they can have bright lances or grav cannons. Grav cannons being particularly powerful anti-tank and anti-infantry weapons because they're basically just like
the battlefield away enemy.
It just basically black holing an area.
Yup.
No other way to put it, really.
The entire concept behind those weapons is that they cause a small singularity that hopefully winks out of existence, and there aren't any crunch rules for that singularity reacting with something else and not winking out of existence. But there's always a bunch of fluff notes surrounding it. It's just like, yeah, we really hope that never happens, because it would probably just obliterate the entire all of the army that was around it, and particularly with the Eldar. That's never a good trade. They have craft worlds going around, and those craft worlds do have some billions and billions of Eldar. The problem being, literally every other race in Warhammer 40k has untold number of planets and untold trillions or quadrillions behind their number. It's an entire thing that they have to be outnumbered by numerous orders of magnitude, just because of their terrible history, being terrible things.
And it is also Brom died at some point. It's also very important to note that craft worlds themselves don't move that quickly. They can't do warp jumps like everywhere else. Like the Eldar primarily travel through these things called webway gates, and we've seen a few of them disgorging troops here. You can build them, and eventually you get the ability to upgrade your buildings so that they have stealth. So you can actually use these to move troops around the battlefield without being seen and attacked from different directions. It also makes very difficult to get rid of an Eldar player if they're very well dug in. You can also actually build troops from them.
Which is why it was so goddamn annoying to fight against Eldar in the multiplayers, because the game only considers you dead if you can't produce any more units. And those freaking webway gates. Never mind, yeah. I'm fine. I'm done.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people prefer the special condition where you win if you destroy the enemies all the enemies like HQs, because that's a bit more fair. and honestly, still plays to the Eldar playstyle of hitting from strange angles. You could probably jump a few Falcons and Vipers in on behind an enemy line and get them that way.
It's a real threat. It is a very real threat. When playing against Eldar in most versions of the game, that you have to have some sort of idea of what their jump capability looks like, and to have a plan to respond if they try to go for a decapitation attack.
Inquisitor was just tanking some of that damage.
So the webway itself is actually also a pretty cool topic. So it basically does make a spider web through the webway, or through spider web through the warp, and that enables near instantaneous travel. But the spider web is armored and basically shielded against the predations of all of the horrific chaos beasts that are
base near this location
that populate the warp. So it's actually a really great innovation and a really great adaptation for the Eldar's overall situation. The problem is that you can only really do it when you have a planet to anchor it to. You can't do it out in the void, because the void is filled with a bunch of relative space, and the equations don't really make any sense. So as a result, all of these craft worlds, they're forced to move at less than light speed. You cannot go faster than light, which means it takes them literal centuries to go from place to place.
which means that they spend a lot of time in a great amount of danger. And this plays into the other important aspect of the Eldar, and that is fate. They spend a lot of time with their commanders, one of their commander type units known as the Farseers, essentially looking through the future in a very sort of vague kind of way, using special stones and their own psychic powers to try and do it. To try and identify what is most likely to be coming to kill them at any given moment. And not all of these fates are avoidable. Some of them you just gotta get ready for and try to fight your hardest, because no matter what you try and do, you can see the runes that you're casting basically telling you there is death, and there is blood, and there is sadness on the horizon. Good luck.
And again, they deserve every last bit of it. So even as I'm talking about this in an ostensibly complimentary manner, no, I'm really happy that being an Eldar is suffering.
and I feel like probably the because we're getting closer towards the end now. I should note the craft world that we are fighting is Biel-Tan. They are the most warlike of the Eldar, and they're the ones that believe that like a lot of Eldar believe that their time is gone, or they hope for like the god of the dead and things like that to come back. The Biel-Tan believe that they can, get back to where they were through hard work, and are a lot more likely to get into fights with the Imperium or alien races or anything like that, rather than like try to manipulate them. And their reasoning for doing that, like quite often, is usually they are protectors of maiden worlds, planets that were seeded before the Eldar Empire fell, to basically turn uninhabitable planets terraformed into wonderful planets full of life and loveliness. And of course, everyone sees those and goes, "Yes, I want to move my house there because this is literally perfect." And Biel-Tan come out of the webway gate going, "Get the fuck off my property! We did all this hard work." And that leads to a lot of the reason why the Eldar don't trust. Why the Eldar aren't trusted by many others, because like if one alien looks like another to the Imperium, like that's just the way it is. So yeah, they might work alongside like say Ulthway in fighting the forces of chaos, but they'll always remember that some other bunch of Eldar were raiding shipping lanes or attacking them on a maiden world, even though the Eldar are, by all accounts, an extremely fractured species. There are more factions in the craft world, and each craft world has its own culture, behavior, and location that, quite often puts them against one another.
As the Emperor's finest.
And so Biel-Tan coming to give us the old heave ho and a fight is 100% in their character.
That's absolutely in character for them.
The fallen shall be forever remembered.
Oh, this is actually something that we should mention. Strategic point has completely decayed. This is something that the game does that's rather interesting to move the damn game along, particularly in multiplayer. So after I can't remember exactly how long it is. I think it's 30 minutes of holding a specific strategic point. It completely decays and ends up giving you something like 1/3 or 1/4 of its normal requisition. So if the battle lines take too long to move and aren't doing anything interesting, the game will just cut your resources in order to hopefully make somebody's situation untenable.
Even in death, I still
we did speak a little about that in the last episode, but we didn't sort of point that part out.
Yeah, so I had meant to explain specifically how it did that, but it didn't come up. Fortunately, it did in this episode.
Yeah, and now I've got to figure out what exactly I gotta do to make this mission this mission thing complete.
Sense the enemy.
Because I'm like, I gotta move. Who else I gotta move? Like, what I gotta do? There, and it's like, oh, I gotta bring
the Force Commander
everybody.
And the Librarian.
This day shall be a glorious one for the...
There you go.
There we go.
So the good Inquisitor senses no chaos here. How fortunate for the Imperium that such keen-eyed eagles stand vigil over her gates.
What dark crafts have these Eldar invoked?
None. At least not here. The servants of chaos sacrificed this poor guardsman themselves.
To what end, Isidore?
I know not. I believe the altar is a marker, A waypoint in a map that leads elsewhere. Someone defaced many portions of text. Regardless of what Chaos seeks here, the altar requires a sacrifice of blood, or more likely, a life.
Brother Isidore, you have an hour to study the altar. Document everything as is our tradition. Then burn it, lest its taint infect us all.
But Gabriel, there is much to learn from here. We should not be too eager to...
Learn what? Chaos does not teach. It misleads and it betrays. There is nothing to learn here, save for our next course. These transports have been damaged somehow. Make the repairs, and be quick.
Well, Brother Isidore, what betrayal have you wrought? Disabling your own vehicles? Harboring artifacts despite your good captain's instructions?
Gabriel does not understand. He does not appreciate the significance of this.
Oh, but I do.
Quiet, heretic. Once I find what you seek, I will use it against you for the glory of the Emperor and my brothers.
You wish to deal me a harsh blow, to prove your strength and worth. Well, then come to me. I wait at Mount Korath.
Have no fear, sorcerer. I will be there.
Yeah, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and Isidore has essentially jumped on a motorcycle, revved up, and gone roaring down down that road to hell.
AC/DC starts playing in the background. It's fine. I'm sure that's only symbolic.
What could passably go wrong with conversing with a Chaos Sorcerer and hoarding Chaos Artifact and lying to your captain? I'm sure he'll be 100% forgiving on that. Yeah, it's we can all see where this is going, but where we're going next is a mountain absolutely loaded with Eldar, and we're going to be getting into quite a significant fight with them. It's going to be a big long fight. This is honestly, it's like the next mission is probably the one that hits the hardest in terms of speed bumps for people playing. Like you'll restart and play this mission your first time playing this game quite a few times, and that will be the next episode. I've been the Last Robokai.
And I have been Cool Guy.
And we'll see you all next time.